So could you emails in the chat?
Do you need mine again?
No, I have yours. Rajat, can you put your email in the chat?
Yeah, was it on my paradigm? Yeah, I can send it.
Thank you. Okay. I'll send out an email chain and then we'll get started. And I believe it's better to start at 11:15 because I think they're live streaming this. So yeah, I think we should start at the time that it actually starts. So. I just sent out email chain. Tell me when you get it and we'll start at the 15th. Okay, did both of you get it? Both of you competitors?
Yep. Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
think if everyone's ready to start now, that'd be a good time to start.
Yeah, I'm good to start.
Yeah, me too.
We're good.
All the best to both the teams.
And by the way, did everyone get the email chain?
I got it.
Okay. Then we're good to start.
Okay, is everyone ready?
I'm good.
Okay, then my time starts on my first word. Our first contention is emergency powers. A huge share of deployments are in emergencies. According to CRS 25, the executive branch has repeatedly claimed authority without approval to rescue Americans and to protect U.S. embassies and legations abroad. If the affirmative writes broad carve-outs for emergencies, then it preserves unilateral discretion. Waxman 19 argues that military conflicts and interventions arise in too many ways and forms to regulate them effectively with a single statutory scheme. That is, a loophole large enough to cover real emergencies swallows the rule. Waxman 19 concludes the status quo provides the best of both worlds, where the president can swiftly deploy during emergencies while giving Congress oversight to shape conflicts in productive ways. Posner and Ramil 7 found that the benefits of presidential authority outweigh the costs because constraints on the executive are associated with increased terrorism. Shackling the executive has real security costs. In the long term, they argue restrictions don't solve because courts and Congress defer to the executive during emergencies because their institutional advantages during normal times are overwhelmed by the executive advantages during emergencies. This begs the question, who will enforce the proposed complete elimination of the president's deployment power and how? In the modern era, this is especially dangerous to create roadblocks for the executive. ACS 5 notes, in a world of intercontinental ballistic missiles, weapons of mass destruction, and terrorism, the deliberative process that is the hallmark of the legislative branch may cost millions of lives. Specifically, 2012 found legislative intrusions upon the constitutional authority of the president contributed to the loss of millions of lives in places like Angola and Central America. That is, the probe creates the worst of both worlds as it causes a delay and perception of weakness among enemies while having no long-term solvency. Our second argument is the military-industrial complex. The defense industry has enormous lobbying power that directly shapes U.S. foreign policy decisions. Don 23 explains that the defense sector uses campaign donations, lobbying, and the revolving door between the government and the industry to secure weapons contracts and influence policy outcomes. Gauze and Lorenz 24 finds that Congress is especially being targeted by lobbying groups when it regains power. Don notes that the defense contractors receive 61% of federal government contracts, with almost 40% going to 10 companies. These firms spend tens of millions in lobbying and hire former military officials to advocate for policies that increase military spending. Sergito 24 finds that defense contractors' lobbying activities influence defense budgets and procurement policies, redirecting resources towards projects aligned with their profit motives. This corrupted relationship drives militarization because lawmakers personally benefit from defense spending. Pogo 22 reports that members of congressional defense committees can own stock in defense companies while passing laws that allocate billions of dollars to those same companies. Major contractors like Raytheon contribute millions of dollars to lawmakers responsible for writing the defense budget. These financial incentives distort policy outcomes. For example, lawmakers who received the most funding supported increases to the Pentagon budget that added over $30 billion more than the Pentagon itself requested. When defense companies profit from conflict, they gain incentives to support policies that sustain high levels of military spending. Transparency International 25 reports that global military expenditure reached a record $2.44 trillion in 2023, while major defense companies saw increasing lobbying activity to secure government contracts. Transparency International explains that large defense contracts create fertile ground for opaque practices, bribery, and undue influence over public policy. Additionally, the risk of nuclear war escalates. Defense contractors lobby governments to increase military spending and adopt more aggressive security strategies, fueling competitive military buildups between major powers. UNIDIR 25 stated nuclear arms carry the dangers of nuclear escalation and inadvertent use, and that these competitive buildups intensify hostility, exacerbating existing tensions among nuclear-armed states. The military-industrial complex indirectly raises the risk of catastrophic nuclear conflict. Thus, we proudly negate.
Okay, is everybody good? Okay. Then, just to confirm, I'm Aiden Zing. I'm the first speaker for Acclive DY. We're speaking off second. So, assuming everybody's good to go, then time will start my first word in 3, 2, 1. We proudly affirm the resolution the United States should eliminate the president's authority to deploy military force abroad without congressional approval. Contention 1 is overreach. Checks and balances are the backbone of American democracy. Simpson of NYU in 2023. The Constitution vests the legislative power in Congress, the executive power in the president, and the judicial power in the courts. Separating powers is essential for keeping the government in check. As James Madison said, the accumulation of all powers in the same hands may justly be the very definition of tyranny. Executive overreach reflects a massive accumulation of power at the expense of liberty and the rule of law because the separation of powers has been systematically undermined. Renwick of Oxford 23. Checks and balances limit the power of authority and ensure that the minority are represented at a more practical level. They ensure that policy is tested, supervised, and improves the quality of decision making. Unfortunately, presidents exploit this. They're using tools that are directly eroding our democracy. PhD Levy 25. Executives are not intended as a way for the executive branch to bypass Congress. Ignoring that framework, Trump and his recent predecessors have unilaterally rewritten congressional enactments. Trump, Biden, Obama presidencies overreach in both directions, ignoring existing laws and fashioning new ones. But it's not just the president. This overreach causes Congress polarization and undermines Congress. 2 warns. 1. Empirics. Congress has historically restrained presidential power, not only feasible, but necessary. Burns 26. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war, not the president. At the tail end of the Vietnam War, Congress passed a War Powers Resolution asserting that legislators, not the president, had the power to declare war. President Nixon vetoed it. In response, the legislative branch overturns the veto with a 2/3 majority vote. 2. Overreach. It undermines Congress. Milkus 25. President Trump takes unilateral action for the Congress. It has been hard to act because it is ensnared in bipartisan gridlock. The Trump administration flurry of executive actions, many of which have pushed the outer boundaries of or directly derogated, and is especially dangerous abrogation of Congress's constitutional authority. We've seen this across multiple presidents, countries, and times. Examples: Obama unilaterally struck Libya using drones in the military. In Biden, Basson and Woodward 24 says the Biden administration has twice invoked emergency powers to circumvent Congress. This escalates military strikes in Yemen without authorization. George W. Bush. Cone 23 proofs, and Franklin Roosevelt. FDR interned the Japanese. NCC 24, Roosevelt directed the military to isolate any citizen, move them to camps with armed guards and barbed wire. And 120,000 people were interned. About 2/3 were Japanese, and legal challenges were unsuccessful despite serious constitutional issues. Lyndon B. Johnson, John F. Kennedy, Richard Nixon. Kelly 13 says that all 3 U.S. presidents most closely associated with the Vietnam War escalated and perpetuated a war that they privately doubted was either winnable or necessary. Harry S. Truman. Truman's controversial deployment of the Korean War. Richard Nixon's Watergate scandal, and it's everywhere. Torpin and Finley 26. Sending the largest force of American warships and aircraft to the Middle East was a possible military action against Iran. The most dangerous way of overreach on the president is through the military, and that's exactly why we need to eliminate it. Jewel and Good 17. The president views military forces as a primary, if not only foreign policy tool, and Trump's reliance on military force at the literal expense of America's other foreign policy tools is a bad policy. No U.S. foreign policy failure this century has been due to insufficient military power. This leads us to 3 impacts. 1. Congressional polarization. Bushi 24. Americans are growing apart from one another, stalemating Congress, and the divide between red and blue states. 2. Overreach. It's empirics. Look at the empirics above. Truman's controversial deployment of the Korean War. Lindsay 20 quantifies that President Truman ordered the U.S. military to aid South Korea, and geopolitical consequences are still felt to this day. The executive alone to declare war. And for these reasons, we urge an affirmation ballot. Thank you.
I believe it's crossed now, and since I was first speaker, I believe I do get first question. So
yeah, Tom will start first.
Okay, so I talked about emergency powers in my first contention. So can you elaborate on what the law would look like, and would it be broad enough to cover emergencies, or will it be narrow, leaving emergency responses outside?
Well, we'd say it's more broad because in emergency situations, the Congress would automatically approve if the president has to do something. So we'd say it won't change from the status quo to if we affirm on emergency situations. So can I take a question?
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about your lobbying. So are you specifically saying that there's lobbying in Congress?
I'm saying that there's lobbying in Congress, and I know you're going to say that this is even though you may say that this is non-unique, there's clear media pressure that the president receives that the Congress itself does not receive, meaning that the
Oh,
president has its own checks and balances through the media.
my
I
question.
believe it's my question now, actually. Congress has the power to restrict the president now by cutting funds, but it's not choosing to do so. So how do you ensure that Congress would enforce these laws and limits, and does Congress even want to?
Well, first of all, I can't determine if Congress wants to because I'm not Congress, but I can sufficiently say that if Congress isn't cutting funds because having direct approval is easier to do, and cutting funds doesn't necessarily mean that the president can't like declare a conflict, which is mainly because the president can just override the budget cut. So can I take a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to your emergency powers contention. This is just confirmation, but are we directly assuming that all your impacts happen if Congress is gridlocked?
Yes, we do assume those impacts happen if Congress is gridlocked. As well, yeah, yeah, we do assume that. And you've mentioned in your own case that Congress is gridlocked, so I believe you
Oh,
are agreeing on that point. I believe it's my question now. Do you how is the would Congress be corrupted and immediately approve all military deployments proposed by the president?
are you saying like all military deployments still accept?
I'm asking, do you believe that Congress would participate in acts of corruption and immediately approve all military deployments proposed by the president?
No, because unless we can say sufficiently that Congress is being lobbied by the president, that won't happen.
Okay, I believe it's your question.
Okay, so there's 10 seconds left across. We can end it here because I don't really have a question.
Or can we have a minute of prep time? Okay, so we ended up taking 1 minute 30, which means that we have a minute and 30 seconds left. Okay. Time starts on my first word. Wait, before that, quick off-time roadmap. We're gonna go over their case, and then we're gonna go over our case. Then finally, we're gonna do some weighing. Judge, AF simply has no solvency in stopping wars or any operation because in U.S. history, presidents have used the CIA to conduct similar operations. However, the CIA is not part of the military, so it is out of the scope of the topic because Congress has no jurisdiction over the CIA. Thus, affirming makes the situation worse because presidents can just use the CIA to conduct secret operations, escalating risk and scale and presidential use of force. Link turn. Sachs 24 tells you that the CIA is the secret army of the US capable of creating mayhem across the world with no accountability. Since 1975, the CIA has run secretive operations backing Islamic jihadists in Afghanistan that utterly wrecked Afghanistan while giving rise to Al-Qaeda. Judge, if we limit the presidential power to use proper troops, the president will likely switch back to the CIA, which makes the situation even worse. Next, non-unique. In the status quo, Congress already has the power to pull the purse and deny funding to presidential military campaigns. Now, even their own empiric about Vietnam proves that Congress has denied funding before, and that even when the president chose to veto said denial of funding, Congress actually voted with a 2/3 majority, which they said overturned the veto, proving Congress does have the ability to overturn these vetoes. However, in the status quo, we see a different scenario where in multiple cases, Congress chooses not to deny funding, which proves our case, link turn, because we tell you, according to military-industrial complex, that Congress is corrupt and Congress wants to fund these forever wars. We tell you that Congress has funded over $30 billion extra to the Pentagon simply out of their own personal interest, and that has accounted to over 61% of federal contracts, or over $442 billion. So what we're telling you is that either Congress already has the ability to ban funding, and we don't need the pro, or Congress chooses not to fund, and that just proves Congress is a corrupt organization, and relying on solely Congress to declare wars is therefore a bad solution. Now, let's talk about loopholes. Our contention one proves that emergency power is important to act in non-attack crises such as Taiwan, where a Chinese blockade on Taiwan could happen in a matter of hours. The best pro response is that Congress can regulate in 3 days. However, that still fails because China can blockade Taiwan in a matter of hours. We simply outweigh on time frame. We tell you that if there's no presidential power to act, then Taiwan will simply be surrounded by China, and the cost will be driven up, and there will be a lot of detrimental costs, such as the $10 trillion from the Indo-Pacific War. So, Judge, what we're telling you is that either in their world, their emergency powers are too broad, which just causes loopholes, or in their world, the emergency powers are too narrow, which causes the US to be vulnerable against defending key international issues such as Taiwan. Now, let's also take a look at their Korean empiric. They tell you that Korea proves presidential overreach. However, it is linked turn. We turn their contention because Korea was an example of how Truman used US troops in order to defend South Korea against North Korea, which is communist. If they support the Korea empiric, they're basically saying that South Korea shouldn't exist and that we should let North Korea take over the entire peninsula, which means that they're supporting communism, which does not stand. So therefore, the argument directly goes back to our side. Now let's go on to some way we already outweigh on time frame because we tell you emergencies need speed. China can blockade Taiwan in a matter of hours, and so you cannot wait 3 days to even 2 or 3 weeks in order to help Taiwan in this sort of crisis. And we also outweigh on probability because we see that congressional lobbying has already been happening in the status quo. In fact, Gauss 24 tells you the lobbying groups must select a single lobbying target. Contract lobbying firms turn to be Congress focused, which tells you that lobbyists uniquely target Congress because of their uniqueness. Because in the pro world, they're the only organization that can declare war, which just tells you that there is uniqueness on the con side. You must prevent further corruption in Congress, and therefore that is why you should vote the neg. In conclusion, the neg wins on both emergency powers and military-industrial complex. The pro has a bunch of contradictions, which make them unable to respond to emergencies, and so therefore, yes, you should vote the neg. Thank you.
Okay. I won't need prep. It's gonna essentially go down frontlining, then attacking, and then if I have time, I'll go on some weighing. Or essentially just like impact defense. And starts on my first word. Let's first defend our contention. So first of all, they say we have no sovereignty because of the CIA and how the CIA is worse when we shift to it. We have a couple responses. First of all, we would say that when we affirm, that means that the president doesn't necessarily mean that the president can do nothing. It just means that Congress can approve it. And we have evidence that either proves that the president is making Congress worse, which means that Congress is going to get better, or the other case, Congress is already good right now, which we also have evidence that shows from 15 metrics and 5 years that proves that Congress is effective. effective. Either way, Congress is going to be effective, whichever one you buy. Then they talk about how there's denial of funding and how that they are funding the Iran war. This is just factually not true, as the Trump administration had requested $200 billion. However, Congress has not approved this request. They need to approve it, and if they agree that it's gridlock, they cannot approve it in the first place, which also contradicts their argument on gridlock. Then next they talk about how we should go speed over quality. We'll respond to that on their case. Then they move on about how there's a Taiwan attack of China will impact defense that. But then they talk about how Korea, we sent troops to Korea so that we could support it. However, we would say if it was true, then we would just be at war with every country. We have tons of enemies. Essentially, they are proposing a solution and they are proposing a way that we should just go to war with every single country that we hate. That's not the solution. That's just participating in wars that outstretches the military, makes the military more tired, and diverts the military from the central United States. Now let's go on to some responding of their case. So firstly, on emergency power, the status quo is not good at all. Congress doesn't have oversight right now. The president just does it without any oversight. Look at the examples we give you that they haven't refuted. Look at Obama. He literally struck Libya using drones through the military without authorization. Biden also circumvented Congress. He also literally invoked security powers to circumvent Congress, making it even worse, and that escalates military strikes in Yemen without authorization. You can look at other examples such as George W. Bush committing his war crimes and FDR interning the Japanese. Again, 3 presidents started the Vietnam War. They had no idea how this war is going to unfold. They literally did not trust in the war themselves, and they essentially just committed suicide for 58,000 Americans to die for a cause that they did not fully believe in. Even the most famous presidents like FDR or George W. Bush are overusing the powers. It's general. Powers are being stretched generally at any time, anywhere. This is also from the president. While on their C2 about lobbying, you just can't buy this contention. First of all, Congress is not corrupt. As again, analyzing 15 metrics and 5 years, Congress is not corrupt and it's also being functional. Again, we would also state that even if you buy that Congress is being lobbied at least a little bit, the president is being lobbied even more. He's being lobbied every day, 181 lobbyists. Again, even if both sides have lobbying, you can still buy this point. What do you want to, what is it easier to lobby 200 plus people in Congress, or would it be easier to lobby just one person on the president? Obviously, it would be easier to lobby one person for the president, which obviously shows you that the president is going to have a less chance of, which shows you that the president has a greater chance of being lobbied in the first place. Now let's go to impact defense. So firstly, on nuclear war, the chance of nuclear war is 0.38%, and it's also speculative. Our Rojoj 19 evidence clearly shows this. Second of all, on terrorism, it's low probability. It's 1 in 3.5 million, as Silverman 22 states that the actual risk of terrorism for those in the U.S. is extremely low. The risk of death from drowning in a bathtub and flying on a plane are all greater than terrorism. For all those reasons, vote nay.
Okay. Before we start, can you send the card into the email chain about how Congress is effective? Because you mentioned it in the rebuttal.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. If you're done, we could begin with the first question.
I can send the card first.
I can send it over and then you guys can start cross.
Okay. It's
Okay.
just like in the old rebuttal tab 1, the first card. Yeah. Before we start, can we have first question, or do you guys?
Because we're first speakers, so.
Okay. Time starts.
Okay. So regarding emergency powers in the pro world, why can't presidents simply declare anything they want as an emergency?
Oh, well, in what world? It depends on what world you're talking about.
Pro's world.
So you're saying in pro's world, can the president do any action?
No, I'm saying in the pros world, because you're guaranteeing presidential self-defense, why can't the president just declare anything as an emergency?
They can't declare everything as an emergency. Obviously, to Congress people, it's going to be obvious that not everything is going to be emergency. And then second of all, we would say that After you affirm, the president has less power. If the president have less power, that means that he has the less chance to declare unnecessary emergencies. Just like you said in a rebuttal, yeah, we could have gone into some countries like Korea and invaded them. If we follow your logic, you're essentially saying that we should go to war with every single country we don't like. We should go
No,
to
that
war with
okay. Wait, can
China,
I just
Russia,
respond to that real
Iran,
quick?
Iraq, people or like countries in the Middle East.
Wait,
You're
can I
essentially
just
proposing a
respond to that real
solution
quick?
that
Can I just
you're
respond
just
to that?
fighting with
You're,
everyone.
no, I'm not cutting you off because you mentioned the Korea point, so I just wanted to respond to it real quick. I'm not saying that the U.S. should go to any war, war with any country it dislikes. What I'm saying is that in your Korean empiric, North Korea was literally gonna take over South Korea. They were at their capital, and so that was what prompted the U.S. to defend South Korea. And so if they didn't do that, then in the status quo, it would just be North Korea taking over the entire peninsula.
Okay.
Korea would just be communist right now.
Then why did the United States not just like randomly go to war with some countries that are a threat to us, like Iraq? Like,
Well,
why not do that?
Well, because presidents have checks, right? We're gonna elaborate on the next.
No.
Basically,
They don't
there's three
have checks. They can do whatever they want. They can start 100 wars in one afternoon. They can
Okay, if they can start
essentially
100
just
wars in one
create
afternoon,
World
then
War
why haven't that
III
done so already?
in just one afternoon. They can sign a check and World War III will happen. That's what they can do. That's how the powers are playing out. And it's not good. There is 58,000 people dying in a war that the presidents don't even believe is any reasonable or
Wait, if
any
the president
making
doesn't believe
sense.
the war is
We have
reasonable, why are
seen
you
the
claiming that the
consequences.
presidents are starting all these
huge.
wars? If the presidents themselves don't believe the wars are reasonable, then why are you saying that the presidents are starting all these wars? And why are you stating that the presidents will be incentivized to start even more wars if they don't
Can I
even
take a
believe that
question?
is possible?
It's only 30 seconds.
Right, but can you just answer the question? If presidents don't believe in the war, why do you?
I'm gonna ask my question first. So my question is.
No, you just had two questions.
No, I didn't. You took the first question. Anyways, I'll proceed with my question. So you talk about this emergency powers. How do you know that speed is better than quality?
So we're saying that in the status quo there is still
Fine.
quality. Congress can still pull funding. Okay, but that's cross.
That's time. You can answer in summary.
We'll take a minute prep.
The time frame probability.
Okay, I believe that was a minute of prep, so we have about around 30 seconds left. Okay, is everyone ready? Okay, then time starts on my first word. Congressional control judges, you should vote calm because of our second contention, the military-industrial complex. Congressional control magnifies military-industrial complex influence because it multiplies access points for lobbying. In the status quo, defense contractors primarily influence the executive branch. Under the plan, they gain influence over 535 members of Congress, each of whom needs campaign funding, is electorally vulnerable, and sits on committees tied to defense spending. This directly proves lobbying within Congress. This increased probability of pro-war or pro-spending decisions, which directly fuels militarization and arms races, which creates unnecessary escalatory conflict. Even if corruption exists now, this resolution structurally amplifies it, meaning risk magnitude increases. We've already stated multiple cards about how corruption will be magnified. As for one thing, the president receives more pressure from the media than the Congress does, according to our card from Cade 16, which we said in our rebuttal, which means that where the president dominated network coverage by 52.3%, while Congress only receives around 20%. This states that the that the president gets significantly more media coverage, significantly more pressure from the public, and this is one of the checks and balances in place to ensure that the president doesn't drag on wars. Not only that, there are other checks and balances as the WPR, which presses presidents to end it by 60 days, and not only which has, and even though our opponent may say that has been violated, our card from Anderson 2024 tells you that it has never been violated since its inception. And not only and onto frontlining some of the arguments, they talked about how Korea. However, we flip this. We say that this proves that speed saves countries, as in the situation of Korea, because the USA interfered so quickly, they were able to save South Korea from being taken over by the North Koreans. And not only that, they talked about how Congress can't approve the 200 billion. This just proves that the argument is non-unique, as in the current status quo, Congress can already stop funds, meaning that this is non-unique and they have no solvency, and also they've completely dropped our Taiwanese point, so you can assume that we win on that point. And now moving on to some weighing, we've already talked about my opponent has already weighed on time frame and probability, and I'll extend on that. First, on time frame, we need speed, as I've already specified before, with the Korean case and with the Taiwanese case. China can invade in a few hours and completely corner the country. If you do not vote for the con, you will essentially be allowing China to take over Taiwan extremely quickly, since Congress takes up to 3 days to make one simple decision, and one single opposed senator, according to Anderson 24, can hold a bill up for up to 2 weeks. And not only that, on probability, we've already proved time and time again in our case, in our rebuttal, and in the speech in itself, that Congress is already corrupt and is providing funding for many military companies just to increase their own profit. So this makes it clear that we outweigh on the time frame and probability, and that is why you should vote for Con. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
That's really
Okay, if everybody's good, we'll take running prep starting when I mute. Okay, we're gonna pause prep there. That was 125. We're just gonna write it in chat just to keep track. So
Wait,
if
just
everybody,
wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Before you begin your speech, I don't think I received the card.
yeah, because I'm not in the email chain, so we have to So
Is it okay if we request it before you start your summary speech?
Yeah,
I
just
can
gonna-
send that.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Oh, my bad. I did not put you in the email chain. Okay. I just sent the card. Tell me when you get it.
Yeah, we got it. Thanks.
Okay, so if everybody's good, then the order for summary will just go on frontlining line by line, and then we'll go on a double bind. So time will start on my first word in 3, 2, 1. First, their case on emergency paralysis. Even the greatest presidents overreach using the military. Look at our examples that we provide. 1. Their entire case assumes Congress is gridlocked. However, Wiseman and Vanderbilt 25 says that the members of the 118th Congress passed legislation and hundreds of bills found their way into the law, hundreds more embedded within large legislative with a combination of 15 metrics. 2. Even if you buy the Congress is gridlocked, this just proves the status quo has problems, which is even more why we should affirm. 3. On the CIA argument. They state we can use the CIA. However, if that's true, can the president also rescue people using the CIA in the status quo? It's a contradiction. 4. Specifically understanding that Congress can't respond quickly. Don't buy this because the president acts quickly, then Congress will too. And the CRS report says that to achieve their purpose, fast track procedures may 1. Set a timeline for the committee of jurisdiction to report the measure. 2. Prevent the committee from killing the measure by failing to act on it. 3. Make the measure privileged for floor consideration. 4. Prohibit floor amendments. And 5. Provide for a prompt floor consideration with little or no debate, which completely destroys the argument of gridlock. And 5. On drop cut funds, because we can cut funds now and it's not doing anything. And on lobbying, 1. Drop. Trump is being lobbied. More 19 cards says at the halfway mark of the President Donald Trump's term, his administration has harder lobbies for every 14 political appointments made, welcoming a total of 281 lobbyists on the board. And 2, if Congress is corrupt, then why does the public want Congress to approve military deployment? Now, let's go to line by line. We'll go down our flow. President Trump, more pressure. There's 20% more media coverage and checks and balances. This is simply not true. And then on China and Taiwan, again, China is not going to do this because the U.S. will support Taiwan, so it's a non-unique. And they say Congress is corrupt. However, they dropped that the president is too. And Korea proves that speed saves countries. Then that's what they say. But then why not send troops to Iraq to stop it from spreading communism? Look at their next final focus. Next, let's go to a double bind that will ultimately summarize the round. Let's consider 2 cases, which is 1, that Congress is gridlocked. They never respond to this. Congress is gridlocked because of the president. And 2, Congress is doing well. They never respond to this, and it also proves that Congress is doing good. There's 15 metrics and a 5-year study by Wiseman and Vanderbilt card. Next, we'll go to a little bit of weighing. If you look at our case, the impacts are clear. All these wars that the president has started with Congress, which we prove is not gridlocked, we can make sure these wars never happen again. However, they're going to keep on happening, and we need to stop this. And for these reasons, we urge an affirmation ballot. Okay, we good for a grand cross?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good for grand.
So we're gonna have our first question though.
Yeah.
Sure, that's good. I'm okay with that.
So you mentioned how Congress is gridlocked, but how does being gridlocked have anything to do with corruption? And how does in either world, either it's gridlocked or it's not doing well, how does either world solve corruption?
Okay, so we would say we put you in a double bind. So first of all, we can consider first cases. The first case is that Congress is gridlocked. We have extended 2 pieces of evidence that clearly show you that because of the president and because of the presidential overreach, first of all, it undermines Congress, and second of all, it's empirics because recently, because of the for example, the Iran war, the Congress is even more undermined, and they also can't exercise their power. And then we also tell you that on the other hand, if Congress is not gridlocked, that means that it's doing fine. And if we allow, and that also just refutes your
Wait,
contention. So we put you in a
Can I
double
just
bind.
respond to that real quick? You
Sure.
you mentioned Iran, right, as an empiric of how Congress is gridlocked. In Iran, Congress actually tried to repeal the president's funding, but it was failed. It was failed because, well, there's multiple
Exactly,
reasons.
it was
First,
failed.
party line voting. B, because the congressmen are inherently incentivized to fund the war in Iran because they in themselves have personal ties with military contractors.
Okay, so if we assume, so you're saying Congress is gridlocked or not gridlocked?
I'm saying Congress has the power to defund, but they don't. So it's not about being gridlocked. It's simply them not being incentivized to defund, even if they were gridlocked and even if they had the ability.
They haven't voted on it yet. They haven't approved it in the first
No,
place.
actually,
Like,
they
the
failed
200
it.
billion fund hasn't even happened yet.
No, it's not about the 200 billion fund. It's previously they had a policy that was going to strike down Trump's war in Iran, but it failed. It failed because
because the president undermined Congress. That's
no, it failed
exactly
because the
why.
majority
Can
of
we
the
take a
congressmen
question?
voted against it. That's why it failed. It's called a
Can we
vote.
take a question?
Sure.
Okay. So let's talk about your whole argument about, well, you dropped emergency power. Let's talk about your second contention about lobbying. So can you give me, first of all, an example of where Congress is lobbied, and second of all, why is Donald Trump less corrupt than Congress or the
Okay, so
presidents in general?
we're gonna go response by response first. We did not drop our first contention, so just okay. But now about our second contention, we tell you that first of all, Trump is less likely to be one president is less likely to be influenced because there's more media coverage that we have proved throughout all of our speeches. There's also the WPR that's also regulating the president.
Okay, if it's regulating the president, then
okay, no, but
why
let me
is
finish,
the
right?
president
Can
still
let me-
overreaching? We need to directly solve the
No,
issue by
He was getting to that
directly
point.
eliminating
Let
Okay,
him
bro.
finish. He'll get to
power.
the point.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I am.
what? Okay, so what we're saying is that Congress is more likely to be corrupt because it faces less media coverage, and we're also saying that Congress has a history of
That's
being corrupt.
fine.
It's literally proven.
No,
in
it's
our case.
specifically about lobbying. It's not about being corrupt or not. That's literally what your contention
Yeah,
states.
that's our internal link. It's
That's
lobbying.
time.
$30 billion to the Pentagon.
Okay, I'll take
What?
running prep to.
We're not neg verse this time, Passion.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Are we still taking prep, guys?
No, we're not taking prep.
Okay, then we'll take our prep for 30 seconds. Okay, so that's our time. We're just gonna go over some frontlining. We're gonna go over our winning contention, and then lastly, we're gonna do some comparative weighing to tell the judges why we win this round. Time starts on the first word. Pro not only has no solvency, but also exacerbates the status quo. Let's take a look at some of their responses. First, they tell you that Congress is gridlocked. However, we say that this doesn't even matter because our internal link is not about being gridlocked. It's about lobbying. And we tell you that Congress is uniquely being lobbied because of their lack of media coverage and also because of our GOS24 card, which has been standing uncontested throughout the round, telling you that that lobbyists specifically target Congress. This is empirically proven, and the impact is $422 billion to defense contractors that they have not responded to. Now, they also tell you that the Korean War proves that presidential overreach is real. However, we tell you that there was literally an ongoing war where the communist North Korea was going to overtake South Korea. So what they're saying is that the U.S. shouldn't have defended South Korea, and they should have let North Korea attack. They should have let North Korea take over South Korea, which just doesn't make sense. They're going to come up here and they're going to compare that to Iraq, but that doesn't make sense because there's no ongoing war in Iraq. There's no ongoing war between two different countries. So that doesn't justify U.S. intervention. What we're saying is that these two cases are different because South Korea was literally gonna be wiped off the map, whereas Iraq there's no actual correlation to Iraq on that subject. Now, let's go on to why we win. We win on emergency powers because we tell you that presidential orders are fast while Congress takes anywhere from weeks to months to pass even a single vote. We tell you that in the case of Taiwan, China can't blockade Taiwan in a few hours, and that the U.S. needs to be quicker than 3 days or even 2 weeks to respond to Taiwan and to properly defend that nation. And we also tell you that we're going to do some weighing. We clearly outweigh on time frame because while Congress takes a long time to respond, we tell you that presidential orders are quicker, and we also outweigh on probability because we tell you that lobbying is already happening, and that pros will exacerbate this lobbying. We can see that all of our cards point to the worsening the worsening of lobbying and the targeting of lobbyists towards congressmen, especially in the pros world. So all in all, Judge, you should vote the con because emergency powers are important to defend Taiwan and the $10 trillion in the Indo-Pacific. And you should also vote con because we tell you that the pro exacerbates the status quo by ruining collaboration. Thank you.
I'm gonna take prep to 2 minutes, starting. So basically, like 30 seconds. Start. I'll pause prep there. As a off-time roadmap, it's gonna go down. Main clashes. Oh, it's gonna go down like our double bind, then overreach and emergency power, and then clashes, then weighing. Time starts on my first one. Again, look at our double bind. We can consider 2 cases. First of all, if Congress is gridlocked, they never respond to this from case. And we tell you that Congress is gridlocked because of the president and they have undermined them in the Iran war. But then, even if they state that Congress is doing well, they never respond to this. And our evidence that shows you that analyzing 15 metrics and a 5-year study shows that Congress is not being gridlocked, has been dropped, and is clean throughout the whole round. Then now let's go on to the key clash of emergency powers and about speed. First of all, again, look at our examples besides Korea. Obama unilaterally struck Libya using drones in the military. Biden circumvented Congress and made military strikes in Yemen. Look at George W. Bush's war crime and FDR and turned the Japanese. 3 presidents started a war that they did not believe in and sent 58,000 Americans to die for a cause they did not even think was winnable. That shows you how even the best presidents or the most famous presidents can also overreach. It's general. Almost every president have done at least 2 or 3 overreaches in their career. But now let's go on to their contention about lobbying. So even if you buy this whole argument, we would say we prove to you that the president has more lobbying. They have 281 lobbyists on board. Then they talk about how that actually there's more media coverage. It doesn't matter. Trump has done random things on media. It doesn't matter about the media coverage. And additionally, again, extend our response that says that would you prefer and would it be easier to lobby 200 congressmen or would it be easier to lobby 1 person? Obviously, it's going to be easier to lobby 1 person. But now let's go on to the impact weighing, which they have dropped on probability. Again, the chance of nuclear war is 0.38%, and there's low probability on terrorism. Even if you buy the China-Taiwan example, it doesn't even matter because even if China invades Taiwan, it knows that it's essentially just going to be suicide because the US is going to be way stronger than it, and they just don't have the incentive to do it in the first place. Thus, we proudly affirm. Good debate. Thank you, judges.
Good debate. Wait, before we end, the thing about 15 metrics, did you guys mention it in first rebuttal or is it something new in summer? Just to clarify.
We mentioned it.
It's
But
like part of the card, I think.
Yeah,
It's
we
part of the
mentioned it
case?
in all speeches.
Are you sure it's part of it?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
it might be.
Okay, then we're good.
Wait, I'm sorry. I need to ask again. You said your media response and your final focus, isn't that a new response? Because I don't remember hearing it during your rebuttal or your
Is it
summary.
okay if we like don't post round?
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Well, good round anyway. Thank you.
Yeah, good round.